Hello everyone. During these 4 episodes of Happy Times and Places commentary on the Gunfighters, the film cameraman Ken Westbury is rightly mentioned glowingly. Sadly, just after they were committed to tape, it was revealed that Ken had passed away at the age of 96. He did so much excellent work, not just Doctor Who, he photographed The Singing Detective as well, and so I thought it only right to acknowledge him and his legacy at the beginning of this last episode of the Gunfighters. Thanks to Ken. You can hear me talking to him. I was very privileged to do so on the DVD of Fury from the Deep, so please check that out if you can. Hello, my name's Toby Hadoke, and I hope that come sunup you'll meet me in a happy time and place, a place where I watch an episode of Doctor Who and commentate along, dropping in facts and observations and accentuating the positive, all the while trying to guess what my special guest's favourite thing about the episode might be.
Hello, my name is Martin Jameson. I was born Martin Jacobs. And my father was Anthony Jacobs, who was an actor who some of you will know, played Doc Holliday in the 4-part Doctor Who series with William Hartnell called Gunfighters.
Well, hello and welcome. It's come sun up, and so we have a date at the OK Corral, not only geographically, but also nomenclaturally. Nominatively, geographically and nominatively, we are at the OK Corral, the final episode of the Doctor Who story, The Gunfighters. Our guide is somebody who has a personal stake in it, whose DNA exists within the it's not celluloid, is it? But I'm watching on DVD, so within the pixels that I am watching, because his dad was Doc Holliday, Anthony Jacobs, fine actor, and who is, I think, one of the best things about the Gunfighters, the much maligned Doctor Who story. I've sort of mentioned from memory my what I've taken away in the back recesses of my brain of what the celebration, Doctor Who, a celebration, said about the Gunfighters, which that and the Radio Times 20th anniversary special, both of them gave the suggestion that this was the bad Doctor Who story. As I say, there were others that got the odd little bit of if not a knocking, but certainly any praise came with the qualification that the fish people weren't that great, or the space pirates was a bit slow, or whatever. But the Gunfighters was bad. The 20th anniversary Radio Times special said the Doctor came up with poorly drawn versions of Wyatt Earp, Doc Holliday, and Bat Masterson. Which was, they were much pithier, those reviews in the Radio Times 20th anniversary special. But again, everything was pretty much positive, but you were allowed to be mean about the Gunfighters. I think because there was also a feeling that it had got the lowest viewing figures, which actually it didn't. I think maybe that myth came slightly afterwards. But there were various things about why the Gunfighters was not loved, but it was mostly to do with the very small number of people were writing about Doctor Who at that time, and that's the consensus that seemed to have been reached, and it's one it's never quite shaken off, which I think is interesting in and of itself. And as I say, I find it very difficult to be objective about the story because it has always been haunted by that. I had not had a chance to formulate my own view of it until I watched it, where I was either going to, go with the received wisdom or react against it. But either way, I wasn't starting from zero, as it were. So anyway, The Gunfighters, Serial Z, by Donald Cotton, director Rex Tucker. If ever reviewers feel tempted to pour scorn on the attempts by America to emulate British costume drama, a good lesson in humility would be learned from studying this serial as a demonstration of how the British cannot do westerns. It was billed as a show about the gunfight at the OK Corral, but it was more the massacre of the OK Corral. This is Jeremy Bentham, a wise and learned man who's responsible for a lot of what we knew about Doctor Who in the early days, and was a fastidious and early chronicler, and a very clever man, a learned gentleman, a nice chap, who has since revised his opinion, by the way. And we're all allowed to change our mind. I mean, some of you listeners are less, are younger than this opinion was, and you've changed a lot since then. So we will. I'm not blaming Jeremy when I'm reading this out. It's just it created such an indelible impression on me. I thought it important to read it out, and it has the picture of Hartnell with Bat Masterson and Wyatt Earp and Stephen and Dodo. It says, an unlikely looking Dr. William Hartnell in the Gunfighters, which has been described as the poorest Doctor Who story. So badly was this show received by the public that its audience viewing figures dipped below the horizontal axis line on the ratings graph in the Doctor Who producer's office for the only time in the programme's history. I'm not sure that's true, and I don't even know what the horizontal axis line on the ratings graph is. And as we've since discovered, there were other stories that got lower viewing figures. What made this serial so poor is the cumulative effect of so many bad points, which on their own would be forgiven in most other stories. The script was pure Talbot Rothwell. I didn't know what that meant. It was only when I saw stuff about the Carry On films later on that I realised Talbot Rothwell was a writer for Carry On. The acting was not even bad vaudeville, and the direction was more West Ham than West Coast. Okay, I thought he was saying the acting was more West Ham than West Coast, which makes sense because West Ham acting. I mean, it's tortuous, but it, yeah. So the acting's not even bad vaudeville. I don't agree with that. And the direction is more West Ham than West Coast, which isn't then even a pun on hammy acting. So I don't know what the, I think for a sense and accuracy have been sacrificed for a bon mot there, Jeremy. It was not good, it was bad, and it was ugly. I see what you've done there. I didn't at the time, funnily enough. It took me ages to go, oh, the good, the bad, and the ugly. That's what he's done there. It's not good, it was bad, and it was ugly. But then again, for years, I knew there was a shop called W.H. Smith, and I didn't think I'd ever seen one. And I would walk down the high street in Newbury, where my grandma lived, and walk past that shop called Westmouth and think that's a really weird name for a shop. And it took me several years to suddenly, when my brain coalesced, went, oh, W.H. Westmouth, that shop I can't pronounce and don't know why it's got that stupid name, is W.H. Smith. So, I'll forgive myself for being slow. Just as Doctor Who fandom has been slow for its brain to coalesce around the magnificence of the Gunfighters. It was certainly the story that decided in the mind of new producer Innes Lloyd that the time had come to rethink the policy of using historical stories in Doctor Who's framework. I don't know if is that entirely true? I think that might be a bit of 2 and 2 together to make 5. I certainly see that has made its way onto IMDb as a fact, which has automatically made me turn against it, because a lot of things that... Yeah, anyway, let's not get into that. I've had a look at my notes for the DVD commentary as well, because I have the production file, but it's on a very slow computer it would be agonising to go and look on. But Philip Maddock was considered for Johnny Ringo as well, as was John Slater, as well as Patrick Troughton and William Dexter. But Alan Tilvan was considered, who is Forrester in Planet of Giants, who played a lot of Americans on British TV, and he has a sort of thick-set American look about him, and he's R.K. Maroon in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. So, an actor of some heft, and he did loads, Alan Tilvan. It would have been nice to see him in Doctor Who again. But I'm glad we get the people that we get, because for many it's their only appearance in Doctor Who. They looked at Ewan Solon as well, who actually turns up next time in The Savages, so it's a good job they didn't get him. Or maybe we'd have had somebody else in The Savages, I don't know. So yeah, and as I say, Cease Linder from Quatermass and the Pit, who is a Canadian, and yeah, Donald Sutherland was sort of apparently for Wyatt Earp, which is odd casting. Because he was young then, of course, but the real deal, Canadian. It would have been great to have Sutherland in Doctor Who, but I wouldn't want to lose John Alderson, who I like as an actor, and I like the fact that an actor from Blazing Saddles is in Doctor Who, and also John Alderson had been in he'd been one of the other Earps. You see Virgil Earp in the film The Gunfight at the OK Corral in 1955. So it's not his first visit to the OK Corral. And he's a genuine Western actor. And he's in Blazing Saddles. And he's in the Beiderbecke, one of the Beidebecks as well. No, I just love John Alderson. And he died in a Hollywood actors retirement home in California, and was and as a really interesting guy with a really interesting career, and that really weird sort of straddling of genuine American Western actor whilst also being a guy that did British stuff and was British, but conducted himself really as an American and as a kind of cowboy. So I wouldn't want to lose him even if we'd gain Donald Sutherland. But then again, I wouldn't want to lose if, Donald Sutherland might have been a good Ike Clanton, but, then I would have never spent an alarming couple of afternoons in the Camden flat of William Herndl asking me to write his biography and getting his wife to bring me in 4 cans of special brew, telling me, because he said I'm an alcoholic, I don't drink, but I don't really trust people that don't drink, so I got her to get you some booze. 4 cans of special brew. So I'm there with Ike Clanton with all his paperwork and his brochures for his nudist island that got infected with chemical waste, saying I'm a bit skint at the moment because I lost £10 million, but I've had a really interesting life. I'd like you to would you help me write my life story? And I'm just like, I can't, I'm getting divorced, I'm doing this Who's Round podcast. I didn't say any of this. I went, I'll sort of think, I'll try. And he said, and he lived in Thailand. So you might need to fill in some blanks there. And he said, I haven't got any money. But he then indicated his wife as she was going out and said, but she's got a sister. And I mean, at that point, I suppose if you were writing a newspaper article, you'd go, at that point, I made my excuses and left. I didn't. I just sort of stumbled over my words and listened to him tell him his life story 3 times, actually, because I did it. I listened to him once because he didn't want me to record it first because he wanted to make sure it was all right. It was brilliant. I then recorded him for Who's Round, and it wasn't quite so good because he kept saying, and as I just said, and it's like, don't say that because we weren't recording that bit. And then I invited a friend back to meet him a few weeks later, who I thought might have been good for writing his biography, and then got him to tell the stories all over again. So I did it 3 times with William Herndl, Ike Clanton. So what a fascinating fellow, but what a terrible actor. And you can be both of those things. It's fine. So those are some of the hair-raising stories that I get up to when trying to track down actors with a minor involvement in Doctor Who. And sometimes I get to meet people related to actors that guest starred in Doctor Who. And that's what happened when I met Martin Jameson, who is the son of Anthony Jacobs, who plays Doc Holliday. And Martin has actually wrote a very interesting radio play about his dad and his dad's involvement with some things at the BBC. And it's really interesting. It's a fantastic play. I will ask Martin if I can tell you a little bit more about that, actually. You might be interested. It's just a nice little tangential thing. So, listen up, everybody. Let us make our way to the OK Corral, which is the final episode of the Gunfighters. I hope I haven't just said all of the stuff that I've got interesting to say in the preamble. And I've just dropped my... let me back that as my remote controls on. Right, so I'm going to press play, and I hope you are too, in 3, 2, 1. Well, and of course, what is fascinating about this episode, it is the last Doctor Who episode of classic Doctor Who to have an individual episode title. Seems weird to say that now, because that was always it's a thing that they did in the old days that you'd never do now. And of course, that is actually what Doctor Who does do now. It's very rare, apart from the end of time and things, to have a part 1 and a part 2. I'm actually still quite uneasy with the whole modern thing of going, The Empty Child / The Doctor Dances, Human Nature / Family of Blood, which seems a bit bit odd. But it only seems odd because I'm used to part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4. But obviously that wasn't the original way of doing things. The original way of doing things was this. I loved Richard Beale. Great face he had. Still acting well till late in the day. That's not David Graham, by the way, as Charlie on the bar. They needed to not pay him for this week, so that was an extra on the bar. And there's no cliffhanger reprise. I think there originally was, because, as you'll notice at the end, the cast, which is normally done in order of appearance, after the Doctor, it's the Doctor, then the cast in order of appearance, lists Warren and the Clantons first. But this episode has been massively edited, or something's gone on, because this is on film, and Rex Tucker has had his name removed from the closing credits. So there's an issue gone on. Nobody was happy at the time, clearly, and that may have affected the reputation of the Gunfighters, is that clearly nobody was particularly happy at the time. The director doesn't make it to the end of editing, as it were. This has the unusual thing of it's heavily edited, in post, or something's done to it in post, because it's on film, and the director's name is not on the credits. Hartnell does a lovely bit of comedy dead body acting there. That's pretty grim, isn't it? Now here we have definitely a bit of a sort of comedy stutter stuff going on. Just kid brother Warren Earp. They're like big kids, really, aren't they? That's not the most sophisticated bit of humour, but it's the actors trying a bit of business. Reed Deruin's good, isn't he? That's a lovely shot of the shadow of the jail. And this well done, because Warren is very sweet, and Martin Huntley does a nice job with his limited screen time. It's curious though, because he has this death, doesn't he, where it says, "Don't tell Morgan they got my gun." We never see Morgan. We don't know what, we don't. That doesn't have a tug for us, apart from the fact it's to try and make it a sort of sad moment. But it's an interesting sort of expansion of the world of the story. And it suddenly gets very, very serious. Got my gun. Oh dear. Oh, bless him. And I'm sure Sonia Malcolm said, "Oh, we were all very sad when he died." We thought he was sweet. Victor Carin has come in as Virgil Earp. He was a Scottish actor, and writer, and translator. Victor Zaccarini is his real name. Carin is his sort of middle two syllables. I think John Alderson is excellent here with the grief that he's doing, and we're suddenly in very, very serious territory here, and the doctor's kind of been shoved out of the way, and this is the sort of major dramatic meat of the story in the episode, and the Doctor's not involved. But I quite like this, that they sort of pay some attention to the idea that the Earps have kind of thrown the law away to turn it into a personal score. Obviously, the OK Corral was very controversial, actually, and the lines between good guys and bad guys are somewhat blurred, and the idea that Wyatt Earp was this honourable lawman is not necessarily borne out by historical fact, even if a lot of writing at the time, which was done by, there was propaganda and all sorts of things. The Wild West and its chronicling is a fascinating thing, and I only know this from sort of, I wanted to learn about, because the OK Corral was in Doctor Who. I read a bit about when I was bored at home. One weekend we had a thing called the People's Almanac, which had all sorts of historical stuff and film lists and all sorts of stuff, and it had stuff about the OK Corral and what really went on and why some what some of the myths might have been. I like all this business with the. I actually think I like the look of that hearth. But all that little business of the Clantons eating there at the top of the scene, and the stretching across, and Park Lantern banging on the table. I think that's nice business, makes it come alive, and sort of believe the dynamic there. But yeah, the whole sort of real story of the OK Corral is another high camera, beautiful. Is a salutary lesson in sort of mythologizing and the real truth behind some well documented historical events, or oft depicted historical events that we think we've got a vague idea of, that actually turned out to be a bit less black and white and goodies and baddies than we might like to think. But by any standards, by today, morality wise, I think the Earps probably came up fairly short. But also fascinating to think that how close to our recent history that this is, and that a lot of these guys were still alive into the 20th century. So I knew people, my grandparents' generation were alive at the same time that people like the Earps were alive, which is a weird sort of crossover, because it seems like such another world. And that's because I'm not from the States. I'm sure if you're from America, there are you can see remnants and echoes and probably modern day equivalents of some sort of things from Western fiction, culture, depiction, etc. But it's very alien to us here, which is why of course Westerns are not often done on British television, and there's a cause. There's definitely he's very good, actually, Victor Karen. He was Scottish, of Italian stock. I do have something to say about him. But is this the first? This may well be the first Western ever attempted on British television. And if that's the case, well done, Doctor Who. And there's no bad vaudeville going on here, and there's some good performances. There are some not good performances. Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. I like the way that Ringo's so dismissive of Billy. It does bring a bit of difference to the three Clanton brothers, who I think do suffer from being not differentiated quite enough, and not well enough acted. They're the main sort of threatening protagonists throughout, but actually they're probably the least interesting of the characters. And I like the way that Bat won't get involved in the gunfight, and I love the Alderson's looking like he means business, but Cairn's great. He's got a lovely manner about him, and he looks the part. He was in Raffles. Was he Inspector Mackenzie in Raffles, which was a series with Anthony Valentine, and did various bits of bobs. Was he in Sutherland's Law as well? Various bits of bobs, but was also a playwright and translator. But what is most memorable about him for me, well, he died on my birthday, 2nd of January 1981. It's definitely 2nd of January, I think, or 1st. No, 2nd, definitely 2nd, which is my birthday. But he was ill of cancer. A great entry there from Anthony Jacobs, hand on his hip. Hello, you went for me. I like that. And I've just been. What doesn't he say last week? I have just been beaten to the draw. So yeah, Victor Karen was followed by a documentary, The Last Taboo, I think, facing up to his terminal cancer diagnosis, and I think it follows him, in his last days, and was quite controversial at the time because it was covering the last taboo, death, and he was the person that they followed. And I've never seen it, and as I say this, would would that? Oh, look at that! That rogue hair is there again on Anthony Jacobs' moustache. Pluck that hair, chop that hair, do something with that hair. It's really annoying. I would that be an interesting extra on the Gunfighters documentary following one of the cast who's in one episode, but it's an archival thing. It wouldn't necessarily get released on anything else, would it? Well, I don't know. It's not often one comes up with a suggestion for the editors of the Blu-ray range for a Blu-ray box set that isn't being planned yet, that I have no idea of the practicalities of. So I'll tell you what, I'll email the actual proper people rather than speak into the air. It may be that it's not deemed interesting enough, but I would certainly accept it as an interesting extra. But I know that my desires are pretty niche and bespoke. I like the way he does this funny little laugh here. He's got a great sort of ratty little rattlesnake thing about him. They're drinking milk, and I've always worried about milk in westerns because they didn't have fridges, did they? It was really hot. Would they have had fridges? No, they wouldn't have had fridges. So milk would have been pretty curdled, I would say, in the Wild West. I'd say drink anything but. That's why I drank so much booze, because it doesn't go off. There's a few cowboys outside the back there walking up and down to fill the picture. And I'm sure Richard Beale said that he'd when he was breaking off from rehearsals, was it for this or might have been for something else? He went outside for a smoke or a breath of fresh air or something and saw somebody jump off a bridge, and jump off a bridge into the Thames. Riverside. Or was this TC one? Anyway, maybe he was. I can't remember what he was talking about, but the gist of it. Let's not get bogged down on the specifics of the program being made in geography. The geography was he was at Riverside and he saw somebody jump off a bridge into the River Thames, and the punchline was he went in and told somebody, and they went, yeah, okay, anyway, let's get back to work, i.e. somebody else will deal with that. You think, oh, that's a pretty grim epitaph for that terrible moment for that person who's sad and tragic and heartrending. Death has now become a slightly badly misreported story in a Doctor Who commentary 50 years later. Gosh, perspective, eh? Read de Ruin's good. He's the genuine article, but of course, and I love he's got a tailcoat as well. It's a bit sort of it's a good costume. That it's something sort of slightly harlequin-y about it. I rather like it. It's almost cosmic hobo-y. That's a squat little nasty little sawn-off shotgun as well. But yes, the Doctor is very much peripheral, because we're gonna. I mean, he's not even in the major sequence here. But Cotton's already done this, hasn't he? He's had a high comedy with the Mythmakers, which has some wonderful, wonderful jokes in it. And again, a sort of slightly bawdy, dirty, scuzzy sort of vibe to it. It takes history and goes, this was dirty, this was, visceral and mean, and life was cheap. But also, here are some torturous puns and some literary-based jokes. It's a really fun way to play with Doctor Who in a way. It's not. They are funny, but they're not without their genuine sense of danger. There's both of the Cotton stories, although they are, they're aiming for high comedy in places. Death is never too far away, and the deaths can be pretty grim. Did I do? It was a tag. She's great. Stone with the ups. Yeah. And again, he's giving it real gravity here amongst the high comedy. They're not selling the danger short. So here we go. We're now suddenly on film, out of phase film even, but means we've got he's even got a jet black horse as well, Johnny Ringo. But this is on film, so we have quite a nice big set, and this is the big. Oh, wouldn't it be great if we had the original film for this? It would look gorgeous as it is. It's a bit blurry. David Cole isn't very good. Now, there's a lot of people talk about it's a mistake in this that the Earps sort of walk into a hail of bullets, but I think that's accounted for with that line where he says, "Wait until they get into range, keep firing until until they get into range, and then keep firing." That's a great shot. Look, that's a beautiful shot, and I remember watching this with an older friend of mine who knew his stuff, and he was he said to me, he said, those guns, they weren't particularly accurate, and also they didn't have a fantastic range, which is why a sharpshooter would be was really important back then, because it was there was lots of bullets flying around, but actually being a dead good shot and a quick shot and a pin sharp accurate shot would make you a great survivor and a great lawman / criminal, depending on what you wanted to be, and that actually it's not that unrealistic that they're walking into a hail of gunfire, because the bullets wouldn't be reaching at that range. Now, I don't know if that's true, but it's resetting the balance from those who think, well, that's just a crazy mistake that they're being fired at and seemingly impervious to the bullets, but they don't seem that far away, though, it has to be said. But that's beautifully, that camera coming up, Ken Westbury is the cameraman. That was a beautiful shot from I like the whole thing of the guys turning. That's nicely westerny of the the start of the sequence, and then you have the camera as and I love the way they both fire in unison there. And Ken Westbury, I think, is doing a fantastic job as the cameraman here. And he's pretty clinical and deadly sharp there. I believe Holiday there, the way that he sort of darts behind the bag. He takes his eye off the ball a bit here, Ringo, but of course this has been nicely set up, that we know that Doc Holliday has this spare gun, and you can see Ringo trying to work out what's going on there. It's nicely done, and it gives Dodo a little bit of agency that her breaking away at exactly the right time causes Ringo to buy it, and he's the kind of main baddie, but the first one to be dispatched. He doesn't get as good a parting line as My Ghoul has just been split into 3 parts. I will next time is the kind of failed Cowboys equivalent of next time I shall not be so lenient. So that's the end of Johnny Ringo. He's not in it that much, is he? But he's a welcome presence while he is. We have that good line to the Ringo is here, he ain't no more, or whatever. So Dodo's on film. Doc Holliday's wispy bit of moustache is not on film, I'm pleased to say. He ain't no more. That's good. I'm gonna get Doc Holliday, says Doc Holiday. Yeah, Holiday. That's his vowels are not very American. But there's a lot of bullets being fired here. This is good stuff. If he has to it's about getting sort of close enough to hit. Oh dear, this is, and they're quite cruelly dispensed, these killings. It's again from being sort of slightly comedic, we suddenly get a massacre where the heroes are there's no sort of, I always have a game with Con Air, the Nicolas Cage film, where he's the good guy because every time somebody dies who shouldn't, he does a sort of sad look. He sort of looks his eyes to the ground and shakes his head. And there's none of this from the heroes where they're cutting down the bad guys and they sort of look, this is grim work, but we have to do it. These guys are like, no, he's just run out of bullets, and they're like, okay, we're still gonna kill you. And that's nicely shot. And there's a great shot on an aerial magazine of I think it's the front of an aerial or some industry magazine, which is the camera at the top there over Bill Hurdle's shoulder, and Bill had a copy of that, and Ken Westbury's in the picture. And actually, that's a great fall that he does as well, because he wasn't a stuntman, and that was a pretty game fall, and that's beautiful shooting of the feet there and all of that. But there was some arguments about the mounting of this and the putting together of this episode, which led to it, having a bit of surgery, and Rex Tucker taking his name off the credits, but his daughter has been there lurking somewhere, who's a later part of Roger and Freddie, which I like. His daughter is not Sheena Marsh, as was written up for some time. I wish somebody had, you'd have kept that, wouldn't you? If I'd been Anthony Jacobs, I'd have kept that. Have a look in your attic, Martin. See if you've got that. Oh, and it's sad. I don't like the fact the Doctor throws the poster away. I'd like to think he takes a part of each adventure with him, even if only in his heart or in his memories. I used this when I did the In Memoriam and had Jackie on. It's a lovely close up of her, and she's smiling and having a good time. Bless her. I have a lot of affection. I as I say, I don't think Dodo's very good. I don't think Jackie Lane is particularly brilliant, but she's. I wish he hadn't thrown the poster away. That makes me sad. But I love her in this, and as I say, having sort of had her as this mysterious person who we thought hated Doctor Who. Actually, she wasn't. When I met her, she was absolutely lovely. And it just goes to show that what we think because of the main headline is not necessarily the truth. I think this was the clip showed of Hartnell on the news when he died. They showed this clip to announce the death of William Hartnell. That's John Raven, who is an extra in The Savages, episode 1. Who only died last year. He was a dancer and stuff at the West End, and you sort of go, I wonder whatever became of him, and then you find out. I tend to find out the year that they've died in order to put them on my In Memoriam. John Raven there plays that Savage. So there we go. That is the end of the Gunfighters. I think it was good. It wasn't bad, and it certainly weren't ugly. A lot of fun to be had from Dodo, a lot of fun to be had from the ballad, a lot of fun to be had from some of the performances, but also, Ken Westbury. I mean, I've spoken to Ken. He's in his 90s now, worked on Kind Hearts and Coronets. Brilliant cameraman, also the cameraman on Fury from the Deep. He did some of the interiors for Abominable Snowmen. Ken's excellent, a legend, who also happens to have done some Doctor Who, but was very good enough to talk to us for the Fury from the Deep Blu-ray DVD commentary. I'm so glad we got to speak to Ken. I should probably drop him a line again. I try and drop these people a line every now and again just to remind them that we still think of them. But you don't want to bother people. But every time I think, I don't want to bother these people, they're actually very pleased that people get in touch and are still interested. So you need to get over yourself sometimes. But I never want to be a pest. It's a fight. There's always a balance. Anyway, what is my favourite thing? I've got to choose two favourite things. Even though Martin isn't doing this process, we've got to choose two favourite things about one for episode 4 of the Gunfighters, and then a bonus favourite thing. I sort of chose the production first, which I think has to probably include the sets and the film camera work. I was going to choose. I do like Ken Westbury's film camera work for that final sequence. I think it's really elegant. I think it's really of the genre. I think it's nicely mounted and good looking. I think my favourite performance is it's a tough one between John Alderson as Wyatt Earp, who is funny and then goes deadly serious in that final instalment, and brings real weight to that loss that he feels for his brother who had such little screen time. But we do feel that. I think that's very well done amidst all the nonsense. And Anthony Jacobs, who I think is brilliant. He's got that, he's got that sort of sly, sort of slightly pinched, rattlesnake kind of delivery and demeanor, and he's very funny, but he's also very dangerous. He's very likable, but he's also very ruthless, and he negotiates that journey very, very well. I like the fact that it's the worst Doctor Who story of all time that actually turns out not to be, and all of the brouhaha around that makes us endlessly discuss the whys and the wherefores, and but also places it in the history of that. I'm brandishing my Doctor Who a celebration, which was such an important part of my Doctor Who education. Even the bits I disagree with like that, I still treasure every word and every syllable, particularly of that chapter written by J. Jeremy Bentham, which was my guide to Doctor Who, my first real guide to all of the Doctor Who stories, and I read it and reread it over and over again, and that was all I had to conjure every single Doctor Who story. And some of these things were things I might never get to see. I mean, some I still haven't, of course, but at least I've heard the soundtracks and I know what they look like. But that was all a journey that unfolded over years, not now. If you're a new fan now, you can there's pretty much the minutiae of every production is available to you at the tap of a keyboard if you so want it to be. I'm so lucky in a way that actually this has been a journey through time to come to understand different things about the show, to the point now that the things the things I have to sort of delve into now are like getting a contribution from the son of a guest star, or thinking about trying to track down a documentary that's completely won't even mention Doctor Who, that covers something that happened to somebody who's in one episode. All of those sorts of things. And I love that it's a never-ending journey, and it's a never-ending reassessment, and it's a never-ending revisit. And I think it's a charming story that is given extra luster by the fact that it has this dog of a reputation, which it's never quite shaken. Now, I'm not saying that everybody that doesn't like it has been influenced by that sort of the way it was written up first, because a lot of people will have come to it fresh and just gone, I don't like it, but I do also think it's the victim of that. It's what's that old sociology experiment where a school teacher's given a class and they're told which ones will be the best pupils and which ones are the worst, and they've been picked entirely at random, and actually at the end of the year what they've been told is echoed by the results. But of course I would say that because I really like it, so it separates me from the horde. So get out of town. I think I have to choose, and it doesn't really matter for which is which. I think I have to choose Anthony Jacobs, and I'm not just doing that because Martin's. In fact, I probably nearly didn't because Martin's going to be listening and Martin's going to be choosing. But I think it is the best performance, and he is the best character, and he's got loads of great lines. I love the way he has the slug of whiskey. I love the way he shoots the guy and nicks his breakfast. I love that scene that he has with Dodo, and I love the way that he does that thing that you have to do in Doctor Who, is to be able to move from the comedic and the slightly heightened to the realistic and the plausible. And he's very, very funny, but he's also very, very dangerous. He's a comedic character who's also a tangible, plausible threat, even though he happens to be a threat on the side of the good guys. But that then plays into the slightly sort of blurry morality of this whole thing, where even the good guys are sort of ruthless killers, and it doesn't shy away from that. So I think Anthony Jacobs has to be my choice, say for episode 4, but it covers all episodes. And my overall thing, I'm going to choose the ballad. I'm sorry. No, I'm not sorry. I love the ballad. I love the fact that Doctor Who, which has, a wonderful sort of kindergarten percussion, strange score for the Celestial Toymaker, the story prior to this, and then a beautiful, haunting bleeding violins to tell the sort of philosophical morality tale of the savages next time, and in the middle has a ballad sung by Nurse Gladys Emanuel from Open All Hours, sung by Captain Rack, sung by the wonderful Linda Barron, and has been bold. And the director's gone, well, there's this ballad that's in the story. Hell, I'm going to make that the score. Tristram Carey, yeah, the guy that did the discordant, brilliant, alien echoing world of the dead planet, of the planet Skaro in the Daleks, and has done other scores as well, of course. But you're the discordant, haunting alien guy. Yeah, I want you to now do a Western ballad. Do not forsake me, Tristram Carey. And I don't think he did. And I know that the ballad is a thing that some people hate, but I love it. But I also, I'll give a nod to that final sequence, which doesn't have the Doctor in it, shockingly. But I mean, you wouldn't want him in it. I think he is in the book, isn't he? And he accidentally Phineas gets shot in the head accidentally, doesn't he? Doesn't kill him because I think it bounces off his skull. That's the running joke, I think, that Phineas keeps getting clonked on the head. And in the book, they only kill Ike and the McClarys, which is closer to the reality of it. But this was never going to be a real depiction. But it is a bit of a bloodbath, and it's pretty unpleasant. The jokes all kind of go out the window. But that is an excellently mounted film sequence with some lovely angles and some lovely, camera movement too. So those are my two things. What did Martin like about episode 4?
Blurmy neck. Right, I've just watched the final episode, the OK Corral, and my God, it's so violent. And there's smoking. There's smoking. There needs to be more smoking in Doctor Who. But there's smoking and there's a lot of killing. And what's so brilliant, I've got a horrible feeling in the 90s, I never got to the end of it. Because my dad is brilliant. He shoots everybody. He's got a spare gun. Oh, it's terrific. I have to say, I have still absolutely no idea what was going on. Who's Johnny Ringo? What on earth? What's he got to do with anything? And there's just lots of fighting and a battle. And I don't know who's supposed to be the good people and the bad people. Dad seems to be good mates with William Hartnell at the end, which is great. I'm glad he doesn't get killed and that he's a terribly good shot. So, yeah, it was, wow, what an experience. So I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed watching it. And it's actually sort of kind of rather well made in its own way, considering it's all in a studio. And, yeah, that's kind of it, really. That's all I have to say. I'm rather proud of it. I'm rather proud to be associated with it. And so that's the end of my commentary, my little DVD extra on Gunfighters. So I hope you've enjoyed it. So I'm Martin Jameson, a.k.a. Martin Jacobs. I'm a writer. I used to write Holby City and Casualty and Emmerdale, lots of things like that, lots of things on the radio. You can go to my website and find out the stuff I've done on www.ninjamarmoset.com. Ninja Marmoset. If you just Google Ninja Marmoset, you get my website, because no one else is called Ninja Marmoset. And you find out all about me, all the different things I do. I review a lot for Sci-Fi Bulletin as well. And, take a look and see what's going on. It would be lovely to see you over there on my website. Anyway, I've really enjoyed this. And it was sort of cathartic and interesting to revisit my dad in this show. And I was rather proud of him. I tell you what, as well, you know what he really does? He does the accent really well. He acts it for real. But hey, those eyes. I mean, check this episode. If you've not watched it in a while, check it out. Look what he does with his eyes. There's a scene in the first episode where he's hiding behind a door. He's listening to the stuff that's going on. And he knows the camera's on him, and he knows the dialogue is somewhere else, and he's saying, look at me, look at my eyes. And he does it again in the later episodes. He knows what to do. He's a stage actor, he's a radio actor, but he really understands television as well, and it's rather wonderful, and it's great to see him do that. It's a shame it's not available. I wrote a play about my dad called Radio Days, which was sort of a fictional thriller, but it was based on my dad's life as a radio actor. And it was on Radio 4 Extra not too long ago. Maybe they'll do it again at some point. And if they do, maybe Toby can flag it up and everyone can have a listen. Because it's this story, very loving story about him as a radio actor and his dedication to things. But he was a troubled man as well. So it's lovely to see him in this Doctor Who series. Okay, that's me. I'm going to go to bed now and dream about firing my 6-shooter. Bye.
Oh, that was nice. I sensed a little bit of emotion from Martin at the end there. Radio Days. It's an excellent play. That too could be an extra. Shall we formulate the Blu-ray release of season? I mean, I should think it's years off the season 3 Blu-ray. We've got to wait for all the episodes to come back. That's me putting on a silly accent to give a different tenor to an enunciation in the way that Johnny Ringo does in episode 3. I talked last episode about people sometimes putting on a funny accent when they want to give something a different emphasis, and that's what I did just then. But yeah, Radio Days, because it is a fictionalized account of his dad's life and something that happened to his dad in his days as a radio actor. That would be a good extra on the Gunfighters Blu-ray as well. Right, mental note. I've just thought of 2 extras for the Gunfighter, because, we didn't do a making of at the time. We should have done, because there were loads of people to interview when we were doing the DVD. We got as many as we could on the commentary. I think more than we could, strictly speaking, afford, I think, because we weren't originally going to have Richard Beale on it, but I kind of twisted John's arm and said, because he was in lots of other Doctor Who stories, I wanted to meet Richard Beale, really. Let's get him in. We didn't know where William Herndon was at the time, but, we could have, if we were making a documentary, we could have probably dug a little deeper and gone a little further, and maybe got him, because I did eventually, and maybe Sheena Marsh would have been persuaded if we'd been making an official product with a bit of cash behind it. Who knows? But they've all gone now. What a shame. But Martin, shortly after this, let me know that something amusing had happened, and I said, well, I haven't recorded it yet. He said, it's just something that tied in. So I've got another little audio file from Martin as a little bonus at the end of this commentary. Here's Martin again.
Hello again. I'm back for a little postscript. So if I'm sounding just ever so slightly sibilant, a bit like Car the Constrictor from the Jungle Book, it's because in a cruel twist of fate, just after recording my responses to the 4 episodes of the Gunfighters, where I was looking at my dad extracting William Hartnell's tooth, the wisdom tooth on my upper left of my mouth at the back decided to crack, and which was incredibly painful. So the following day I rang the dentist. I said, can I come in? Anyway, so this morning, 2 days later, I went to the dentist, and he tried to rescue it, but he couldn't. And I had to have my wisdom tooth taken out, which, if any of you have ever had that done, you'll know is really, really unpleasant. So while I was waiting for the local anaesthetic to kick in, I said to this very, very nice young dentist, I have a sort of oblique connection to your trade. in that I've just been watching my father playing Doc Holliday in Doctor Who with William Hartnell, where obviously Doc Holliday is a dentist of sorts, and when the Doctor is in the chair, they don't have Novocaine, and so Doc Holliday offers him some whiskey to drink. So I said, if you have a bottle of Red Eye, I'll have that. So the dentist said, well, as you happen to mention it, no, he didn't get out a bottle of whiskey, that would have been nice. He said, now that you mention it, he said, during lockdown, because people couldn't get to the dentist and they had to wait weeks or months to get an appointment, and they were in agony for ages, rather a lot of people took to anaesthetising the pain with whiskey. So there you go. Life imitating art, or art imitating life, whichever way round you want to look at it. And I just thought it was worth adding this because it was, what do they call it? It was, when time and when events come together, there's a word, synchronicity. I think that's the word, synchronicity. A little bit of that happened. Anyway, I just thought I'd add that strange little coincidence to my account. But perhaps it's my father coming back to haunt me in some strange and deeply ironic way. All right, so this is Martin Jameson, a.k.a. Martin Jacobs, a.k.a. Car the Constrictor, the sibilant constrictor, signing off. Good night again.
I really enjoyed Martin's contribution, and I hope you did too. I sort of like the sort of broad spectrum of guests we get for this. I've been very lucky by the people who've agreed to do it, and sometimes it's people you've heard of, sometimes it's people you haven't heard of but you might kind of have an inkling who they are, sometimes it's people you wouldn't expect but seem kind of appropriate, and sometimes it's people who are fans of Doctor Who I think you should hear from, because they're nice, fun and interesting people, and they don't have to be exemplars of the arts in order to get a ticket to Podcastville. But in Martin's case, a unique specimen, somebody who is an exemplar in his field in the arts, but also has a tie with the story because his dad was in it, but who isn't necessarily a Doctor Who fan. But I think that's quite fun as well, to have somebody come in who isn't well versed in the entirety of Doctor Who, but who knows his television and knows his stuff and is an articulate and very witty commentator. I love Martin's Facebook page, where he gets to grips with quite a lot of modern television that sometimes struggles to escape his wrath, and he does reviews for Sci-Fi Bulletin as well, and very good ones too. So do chase down his work. I always look forward to when he's got something new to say, or when he's written something down, which is why I just thought, let's chance it. I don't think I asked him to do the Gunfighters. I said, would you, is there a Doctor Who story you would do? And he said, well, why don't I do the Gunfighters? And I thought, I'm not sure I thought of that, because you've got a personal stake in it, but yeah, let's go for it. So that's nice, because quite a few different people could have chosen the Gunfighters, and the angle would have been obvious. Everyone hates the Gunfighters, let's champion it, which is a sort of predictable way to go now, actually. And of course, that's the angle that I took. I think it's actually quite fun that our guest didn't have any of that baggage, but had a different kind of association with it. So I hope that was fun for you. It's certainly fun for me, and I know the people that have listened to the early episodes already have really cherished Martin's unique insight and unique association with the show. So it just goes to show that this was no effort for me. That there will be stories that will be harder for me, but that a story that is largely considered to be languishing near the bottom of Doctor Who popularity, even now, even though it's certainly escaped the label of being the worst Doctor Who story ever, still struggles to break out of that the depths of Doctor Who popularity. It's never going to, be. It's never going to escape from the lowest tier, I think, in polls and things like that. And I think that's a shame, because I think it is entirely what it wants to be. I think the scriptwriter has does really interesting things with Doctor Who. I'm not sure he quite gets Doctor Who, but I do find that kind of charming. And when you've got 48 episodes a year or whatever, you can do that. You can have something that's a bit of a break from the norm and the style. In fact, you're sort of almost desperate for it to have the show do something very different. It's part of that weird landscape that the Wiles and Tosh era has, where the show explores very different ways of doing a Doctor Who story. Not all of them comfortable fits, but again, you can kind of have that with the show then, and it actually stops it from becoming repetitive and formulaic. I think it's quite bold, as I say, and where Cotton has this really interesting take on the show itself. A very, I think, in the long run, a take on the Doctor that is not tenable, but for 8 episodes is absolutely fine, where he's this slightly confused onlooker who sort of wins by sort of knocking something with his elbow and causing a chain of events that that causes the story to come to a culmination, rather than being a wily manipulator or a smart operator or even a sort of moralistic crusader. He's this sort of accidental tourist, which I rather like, through literary genres or certainly fictional genres. But as I say, probably not a tenable take on the character forever, but certainly works every now and again. And you love these what could have been if the show was in different hands, or because it's an interpretation, and it's an interpretation that made it onto the screen, if only for a few small windows. But then you've got Cotton's unique take on the show, but then handed to a director who clearly not happy and was has an association with Doctor Who because he was going to be its first producer, but was a well-respected and I know Hartnell and Purvis might not have got on with him, but Richard Beale spoke very highly of Rex Tucker, and was a very experienced BBC operator who comes in and takes this sort of knockabout comedic script, but gives it real sort of plausibility as a Western in a BBC studio. There's some beautiful angles. There's some gets a great film cameraman in Ken Westbury for the film sequences, but his shooting and some of those high shots that he gets in the studio are very well. They're very well done, but they're ambitious. It's ambitiously put together. Barry Newbury's set design is phenomenal. I mean, it's really good. And they haven't gone, it's a comedy, so it can be a bit tatty and frayed around the edges. They put, let's put this within as grimy and plausible a Western setting as we kind of can. And there's a real attention to detail. And Stephen's costume does look a bit more like a fancy dress version than everybody else's, even from the sort of sheen of it under the lighting. It's a slightly cleaner, more costumed version of what is then more plausibly rendered with the grimy, grubby, genuine cowboys. And I think all of that sort of stuff has been really well thought through. So often, sometimes I think when people are doing comedy, they tell they're off the ball with the other stuff because it's almost like, well, this is daft, so we don't have to pay quite so much attention to production values and all of that. And I think all of that side of things is excellent. It is let down by some of the performances, which have an extra dimension of badness. Some very bad performances in The Ark, which is another story that I love, but they're not also bad performances with bad American accents. So I think the fact that it's something incongruous on British television, the American accent and the Western thing, the bad performances are kind of get an extra dimension to them. And there's a slight incongruity and uncomfortableness with a Western being done in Britain, but I certainly don't think it's any. I think as Westerns go, I don't think it makes the case for westerns shouldn't be done in the UK. There's a wonderful Norbert Smith A Life, Harry Enfield, where he's playing a fictional actor going through all the sort of different shows that the different films that he did in his acting career, and that's where there's a gritty northern kitchen sink. It's grim up north, and I'm going off to I'm off out to kill some of our kids' pets, and all of that. And there's a Noel Coward does Hamlet, and there's a Will Hay comedy type thing, and there's also a western where what was it? They called him Strange, and it's I don't hold by no sticking around, and it's all sort of English actors doing very bad sort of Western stuff. And if ever you'd like to come in for a cup of tea, and it's very funny. It's a sort of stilted English acting trying to pull off a Western, and that's what a British Western could have been like. And this is I would urge you to go and watch Norbert Smith A Life. It's a marvellous thing, one of my favourite things. And it's got Murray Watson from Black Orchid as Sir Donald Stuffy, who's this boring old actor. It's got lots of wonderful actors in it, and even Con O'Neill, who's in everything these days, playing Davy Throb, who's basically Cliff Richard from the musical Keep Your Hair On, Daddy-O. So yeah, there's a very witty Western piss take in that. What is it? Come on, Smudgy, there's a sugar lump for you in the next town. That's what it could have been like, and it's a much better Western than that. And those studios were cramped. There's actually a sense of scale and location and place, and some really good performances. I've highlighted the bad ones because I'm trying to account for its sort of bad reputation, but there are some better than average performances in it too. I think Lawrence Payne is wonderful and threatening. His accent's very, very iffy, but he plays the part well. And I think John Alderson, Anthony Jacobs, Sheena Marsh, and Reed DeRuin are terrific. And I've got a soft spot for Richard Beale too. And Hartnell's great in it. Hartnell does the comedy. He gave me a gun, he extracted my tooth. People keep giving me guns, and I do wish they wouldn't. All of that stuff. Shane Rimmer's good too. Hartnell's magnificent. Purvis is magnificent. Really knows how to play the comedy. Slightly fades out in the last episode. I think we kind of lose Stephen a little bit, but he's very good as the sort of hapless. I'm having to kind of get away with this whole cowboy thing, and it's definitely Jackie Lane's best story, and I love Dodo in this story. As I say, I think Dodo has some real problems in terms of where she's placed as a companion, what they give her to do, and the fact that she's not great, and yet, despite the fact that I don't think Dodo's up to much most of the time, and I don't think Jackie Lane is the best actress. I'm very fond of Jackie Lane. And the fact that she turned out not to be this dismissive Greta Garbo type, she actually just turned out to be somebody who was a bit shy and not comfortable sort of speaking, really. She didn't dislike Doctor Who, and she had no disdain for it, and was absolutely lovely when I met her. And then subsequently exchanged emails with her, where she was, nothing like this. Yeah, as I say, Greta Garbo figure at all. She was a nice, ordinary lady who was just, I think, a bit shy and a bit uncomfortable in the limelight. And I love her as Dodo in this. I think she's terrific as Dodo. Wish Dodo had more stories like this to really show her, sweet, vervy, adventure-y side. I think she's a great character in this. So well done, Jackie, as well. So I love the Gunfighters. I didn't have to pretend there was no accentuate the positive despite lots of caveats. In fact, I've had to sort of highlight the negative things, if only to sort of try and account for why it has such a bad reputation. I think it's much better than a lot that surrounds it. I think it's refreshing. It's very much its own beast. I think the landscape of Doctor Who would be poorer without the Gunfighters. So thank you to Martin Jameson, and thank you for listening. The OK Corral? OK? No. It's wonderful.
I think you'll find. I think you'll find.
I think you'll find.
I think you'll find.
The viewing figures, by the way, were not the lowest. I think I mentioned that during the commentary, but as I've got time and space, I haven't referred back to what I said, but I know I poured some doubt on whether the viewing figures were the lowest and whether those viewing figures were enough to convince Innes Lloyd not to do any more historicals. I think the audience appreciation will perhaps had more of an impact on that. The audience appreciation for episode 4, The OK Corral, is 30%. That is extremely low. I think probably the lowest. Episodes 1 to 3 got 45%. 39%, 36%. So it's spiraling downwards, and 30% is an all-time low. It got 5.7 million viewers, episode 4, which is the lowest of the serial. First episode got 6.5. But, if you look at The Smugglers, that, is not far off, and that got lower figures. That got 4.3 million, 4.9 million, 4.2 million, 4.5, but the appreciation is in the 40s. And for context, even when we're supposed to think of Doctor Who being in the doldrums of popularity, the audience appreciation for Trial of a Time Lord was, late 60s, early 70s for the Happiness Patrol, mid 60s. And viewing figures wise, though, actually Trial of a Time Lord episodes 3 and 4 got 3.9 and 3.7. So again, far lower than the Gunfighters. So the Gunfighters didn't dip the lowest on the axis or whatever that was, but that audience appreciation of 30% for part 4 is a real downer. Well, thanks ever so much for listening to Happy Times and Places, which is presented by me, Toby Hadoke, and my special guest, Martin Jameson, who can be found on Twitter at SmartArts, that's with a Z, and his website, as he said, was ninjamarmoset.com. What a thrilling combination. I'm grateful to Martin and to the many patrons who make these podcasts possible, and they include Simon Hodges, Andrew Hodson, Sam Hollingsworth, Matthew Hooliston, Darren Howard, Tom Hunter-Watts, Steve Herr, Paul Ingerson, Ed Jefferson, Robert Jewell, Andrew Jolly, Judith Jackson, William Keith, Matthew Kilburn, Colin Kilpatrick, Andy Kitching, Hendrik Korzeniowski, Pete Lack, Pete Lambert, Andy Larson, Erica Lear, Joe, Paul Lindbald, Neil Little, Mark Leadsom, Andrew Lester, Andrew Llewellyn, Paul Loveday, Jacob Lumley, Nate Lynch, Darryl McLean, Philip Marsh, Joe McLachlan, Glenn MacLeod, Steve Manfred, Nick Mellish and James Miller. The music is by Dave Gates, the artwork by Dylan Patterson. If you would like to join that list of names, who are the people that help to support these podcasts and make me do as professional a job as I possibly can, using good equipment and, proper recording facilities and spending, proper time putting them together and making them, I hope, broadcast quality, you can do that by going to patreon.com/Toby Hadoke. From as little as £3 a month, you get bonus releases, exclusive material, monthly AMAs, pictures of my dog, the odd interview from my archives, little bits and bobs here and there. There's 3 releases a week at least. The pictures of my dog don't count. They're a sort of bonus on a 4th day. And sometimes there's extra stuff as well. But guaranteed 3 releases a week. And there's a 10% discount even on the £3 a month. There are higher tiers. They'll get you extra little trinkets, but all of the content, I hate that word, is available at the lowest tier, but all of those tiers have a 10% discount if you sign up for a year in advance. That's at patreon.com/Toby Hadoke. There's also the Ko-fi model, which doesn't tie you in to a monthly commitment, but doesn't get you any extra bonuses either, but is it's essentially an internet tip jar, where if you've particularly liked an edition, or you're feeling particularly flush, or even sorry for me, where you can buy me a metaphorical cup of coffee at ko-fi.com/Toby Hadoke. But look, times are tough. The world has gone crazy. I've just seen my electricity bill, and if yours is anything like it, don't go spending money on fripperies like the verbal diarrhea of Doctor Who anorak. Save those pennies. We all need to. It's utter madness. But anyway, I'm just happy that if there's free entertainment in there in the form of podcasts, and there's hundreds of millions of them, and you choose to listen to mine, I'm thrilled. I'm grateful. I hope you enjoy them. And if you do enjoy them, please do something that costs you absolutely nothing, apart from a little of your time, which is to go to your outlet from where you download your podcasts and leave these 5 stars and a couple of lines of review, because they really help to make these podcasts more visible to other people who might also download, digest, and enjoy them. And that's what it's all about, really. It's, you put the effort in because you hope as many people will listen to and enjoy this stuff as possible. I'm always grateful for your engagement and your feedback, and any positive feedback, as I say, really helps to get the word out there. So yeah, leave those reviews, ping those 5 stars, and everybody will be very happy. 5 points would, of course, be like the five stars, like the 5-pointed star of the sheriff's badge. It would only be appropriate, and also, like the Gunfighters, I'm shockingly underrated. Well, this is what I tell my partner at home all the time, because she's massively successful. Yeah, I'm just underrated. That's all it is. I say to the MBE and BAFTA winner. Oh, sometimes it's difficult living in the house of somebody who casts a massive shadow. So go on, give me my 5 stars. It might be all I get this lifetime. I'm on Twitter at Toby Hadoke. These podcasts have their own feed at Hadoke Podcasts. I have a page on Facebook, comedian page, which I put all the work related stuff. I've sort of, in the early days of Facebook, I befriended everybody, and so I've run out of people I can befriend on Facebook, so I'm sort of moving Facebook stuff over to a more professional page, and I'll turn the personal one into something just for people that I've met. So congregate on I hate the word fan page, but I think that's sort of what it is. Well, it's a page. It's a professional. It's Toby Hadoke comedian, that one, rather than Toby Hadoke. Here's me talking about what I had for lunch, which I don't do. But let's not get into that. So yeah, I've got a Facebook page. Also have an Instagram, toby.hadoke, which I'm trying to make much better, and I'm learning to edit videos on and do all of the Instagram business that the modern people do. So do follow me on Instagram, because having done quite well at social media in the early days, I feel I'm underperforming on the Instagram stakes, and I'm turning my attention towards it, just as probably Instagram's going out of fashion and we should all be TikToking and Momoing and OnlyFansing, but I'll get to them eventually. I'm not sure about. Yeah, I'm not sure I'll do the OnlyFans thing, but if there's demand, I'm nothing if not acquiescent. Although is acquiescence what you seek in the purveyor of your OnlyFandom? Let's let OnlyFandom, Doctor Who OnlyFandom. The scandal. I think I might stop now. And for those of you that are doughty enough to stay right to the bitter end, the post credits sequence, I always do a little bit of chatter here, but this one actually has some worth in the sense that, to pick up from something I mentioned within the commentary, I managed to get hold of a copy of The Last Taboo, the documentary which charts the last days in the life of Victor Kerin, who plays Virgil Earp. He was only in his early 30s in the Gunfighters, and it's a really touching, very honest sort of portrait of a guy who's come to terms with his imminent death and talks about it, eloquently, thoughtfully, and his daughter, his young teenage daughter, features at one point playing records for him, and he gets quite emotional, and it's terribly moving. And I'm happy to report, Kate Kerin, is now a hugely successful movie costume designer, resident in South Africa, who's got some extraordinary movie credits after what must have been a tough, really tough time losing her dad, who, Victor Kerin, died at the age of 48, which is younger than I am now. Gosh, that's extraordinary. And actually, the programme is The Last Taboo is presented by Bernard Falk, who was quite a well-known face on the telly when I was younger, but who also, people looked older in those days, but I assumed was quite old then, and he wasn't. And he died at 47. My good Lord, it's life suddenly feels quite short sometimes when you look at it. And this, 1981 he died, which was 40 years ago. But it's a really touching program, and I will suggest it to the DVD people. There might be all sorts of rights issues, or they might just go, it's a very tenuous link to the Gunfighters, but they do sometimes put archive stuff on. So I'm going to suggest it. Who knows? If it happens, we can go, oh, well, and if it doesn't, we go, oh, well, at least they tried, and there will be good reason why it doesn't. Russell Minton, who's the exec on the Blu-rays, is fantastic at getting as broad an array of extra material as he can, and he tries to get stuff licensed, and tries to cater for all tastes as well. So maybe that you think, well, that's not of interest to me. Well, fine, you don't have to watch that. And you may think, well, that's really of interest to me. And it might be, yeah, but we couldn't actually justify the cost. So there's always good intent, and all I can do is suggest it. Yeah, Kate Carin, his Victor Carin's daughter. I suppose it's of interest if we've just been talking to Doc Holliday's son. Well, Virgil Earp's daughter is the costume designer for Good Omens, for Around the World in 80 Days, for Strike Back, which is a bit of a guilty pleasure of mine, which is lots of shooty things and tough talking and lots of action and adventure. But she did Gettysburg, she did the 51st State, she did Spice World, so Shallow Grave, the creative genes linger within the next generation of the Carin family tree. But it was a sort of privilege to watch a man being so honest, and to get a piece from the archive. It's only a tangential relationship to Doctor Who, but it's enough to sort of lead me to it, and to get me to experience something that I found sort of a privilege and very moving, and something I might not otherwise have looked at and come across. So Doctor Who, it takes us all in funny directions and to different places, and long may it continue to do so. But I enjoyed that one, and I hope you did too, and I hope that if you were a fan of the Gunfighters, we justified your support for this often too maligned slice of Who. And if you think the Gunfighters is a load of old nonsense, well, I hope this has made you appreciate the nonsense for the nonsense that it is, and actually rather enjoy it. I hope so. That's all I try to do with life, which is just, I don't know, I'm approaching 50, and life feels very, very short, and I think the best thing one can do with one's life is to try to make I have no grand ambitions apart from, obviously personal career ones, but I may have come way too short on those already, and it's too late. But in terms of ambition, I have no grand ambitions apart from if you encounter me during your day, I would hope to put a smile on your face, and if not make your day better, certainly not make it any worse. And I think that's as ambitions go. I'm gonna try and manage that one with the brief time that we have. Yeah, who knows? I might not even make it to the release of the season 3 Blu-ray box set. You never know, but I do hope that I do. Gosh, that all got subtly maudlin, didn't it? Anyway, I'm going to go and enjoy the sun while I still can. What's happening to me? Anyway, lots of love. I don't know what's wrong with me.